Hey everyone, Tin Man here, and Dota Underlords has just put out a huge update with 8 new units, a bunch of return units as well, new alliances, removal of some old alliances, new items, reworks, and all kinds of other changes that are sure to make the game feel very fresh and new. Now, before we dive into that, I do want to say a few things about what I've been up to for the past few months. Obviously, I haven't made too many videos recently. The global pandemic has caused a lot of disruptions in, well, everything, and a lot of the work that I had been doing on the side of content creation dried up because of it. So I took some time off to focus on my mental health and kind of get myself into a better situation, and I even moved apartments, as you can tell by the kind of lackluster background. I'm working on it. I still really enjoy content creation and will definitely continue to do so in some capacity moving forward. I don't know the exact specifics yet, I can't commit to anything, but we'll see how it goes. But in any case, I am really excited about this particular piece of content covering this update to Dota Underlords because, well, I designed it. Yes, for the past few weeks, I've been working with Valve as a game design contractor. I took on lead on designing the new units, the new abilities, alliances, items, decided which ones to rotate out, and also had a big role in the balancing and testing of all of it, along with several other testers. Now, this is also not the first time I've been working with Valve as on game design for Underlords. In fact, I also did all of the puzzle design as well. So every puzzle that is currently in the game, the 17 in the City Crawl and the 14 Early Bird puzzles, I designed all of those based on the themes of the zone or the weekly issue. And I've heard a lot of feedback from people that they really do enjoy the puzzles. They're a cool little bit of side content that shakes things up in a different way, and so I'm really glad to see that a lot of people have enjoyed those. With that in mind, we've got a lot to cover in this update, so let's hop right into it. New blood on the streets. So this is going to be a big shakeup here. We've got, of course, a rank reset. It's not quite a brand new season, but anybody who was up in Lord is going to be dropped down to Big Boss, and everybody else is going to be lowered down one major rank. They've also introduced a thing called Classic Mode. We've introduced a Classic Mode that it's a casual mode, so it won't be ranked, but it essentially turns the game back to the way it was before the Underlords were introduced. And I know a lot of people have said things like, oh man, I didn't really like the update that introduced the Underlords. They thought it kind of skewed the game quite a bit and really changed things in a negative manner. And some people disagree with that. People like different things, but now there's going to be an option for those type of people who want to play the game without Underlords, with creep rounds back, with higher interest cap, and a lot of the changes that have been made kind of undone. You can experiment and play with all of that in Classic Mode. Obviously, it'll still have the new units and all that kind of stuff, but it will... you have that option to play kind of the old structure of the game. Okay, on to the cool parts, the new heroes. So first off, we've got Vengeful Spirit, a tier 1 Heartless Fallen unit. Now we'll get to the new alliances in a bit, so we'll talk about Fallen later. But the ability for Vengeful Spirit here is Wave of Terror. Vengeful Spirit will let loose a wicked cry in a straight path, kind of like a shot, just like any kind of straight line ability, damaging enemy units along the way and also reducing their armor. And she has a 3-star effect. All of these units that are tier 1, 2, or 3 will all have 3-star effects. Whenever Vengeful Spirit dies, she will deal a big burst of damage to all nearby enemies within 2 cells of her. So a pretty straightforward unit. You're going to use it in Heartless comps because obviously you want to be reducing people's armor for Heartless. So kind of a good support unit to kind of just stick on the front line, get a wave of terror out, hit the opponents, and soften them up for your heavier hitters behind her. Meepo. This is a really interesting unit, a tier 2 rogue summoner. Once again, rogue, a new alliance we'll get to in a moment. His ability is Poof. So Meepo will teleport to a random enemy and then deal damage to all adjacent units wherever he pops up at. And so that's not terribly interesting on its own, but his passive ability called Divided We Stand. Whenever Meepo casts an ability, he will create a copy of himself with the same health that he currently has. If Meepo or any of the clones die, all Meepos will die. So this is kind of taking a page out of Arcwarden in that he likes to make copies of himself. The scary part about Arcwarden was that he would get completely out of control and you could never contain it all. Meepo has a lot of carry potential because every time he poofs, he's going to deal a lot of damage to nearby enemies and then also keep on auto-attacking, and then the clones can make poofs as well. They all gain full mana, unlike Arcwarden. But of course, the downside is if any one of the Meepos die, then they're all going to fall over. And at 3-star effects, the clones will copy Meepo's items as well. So I really want to see Meepo as like this big build around unit. You know, you're going to get him relatively early at tier 2, and you can get him leveled up, and he can hit pretty hard. You can get him up to 3-star, copy some powerful items, and you can really go to town, but he's going to be very vulnerable to strong single target attacks or other kind of CC that can lock him down, and then you only need to burst through one of the Meepos instead of all of them. So he has a lot higher ceiling, but also is kind of risky in that regard. And of course, all the summoned units count for the Summoner Alliance as well, so they'll be hitting pretty hard. Spirit Breaker. Now, this is a unit that was previewed a few weeks back as one of the preview units in this update. So Spirit Breaker is a tier 2 Savage Brute. Now, that's an interesting combo because we've not had that combination before, and he's got the Charge of Darkness ability that he's going to charge to a distant enemy, bashing it and enemies along the way, so basically just stunning and dealing damage in his path. This is kind of similar to what we saw out of Sand King, where, you know, he's going to dash forward and going to knock people or stun people along his path. Not quite as powerful, obviously, since he's a tier 2 unit instead of a tier 5 unit, but it does give Brute builds a little bit better backline access that they've not had before. A lot of Brute's defensive capability was based on applying that Brute Alliance, the debuff, to enemies that they can get in melee range of, but that left them very vulnerable to opponents who had ranged damage dealers that you couldn't quite get to. So Spirit Breaker gives them a little bit of a better option to get that backline access, and also gives some CC to the composition that previously did not have any. The Spirit Breaker 3-star effect gives his auto attacks a chance of bashing the target as well. So he is all about smacking opponents, stunning them up, and also, you know, stacking up the Savage bonus as he does his auto attacks. All right, Spectre, a tier 3 Void Demon. So we have another Void unit, although a Void unit has rotated out, so we still have the same number, but also a Demon. So it's an interesting combination. Neither of these two are kind of like primary build around me alliances, so it's going to be a little tricky to fit Spectre into a lot of builds, unlike, you know, say something that has Assassin or Hunter or Brute or Knight tag that you're like, oh, I can build, you know, a comp around 4 or 6 of these units. These two alliances are kind of secondary alliances that it'll be interesting to see where we can fit Spectre into builds, but I think she'll be very powerful when you can get her in. So her ability is Spectral Dagger. She will fling a dagger at an enemy hero, dealing damage, and then drawing a shadow path along the way to that enemy. Enemies along that path will lose movement speed and attack speed, and then Spectre will run to attack that unit, gaining massively increased movement and attack speed. While on the path, Spectre will also gain phasing movement. So essentially, Spectre is going to, you know, get the mana, throw this at a distant enemy, and then dash to it and just blow that enemy up. Because obviously, she's just cast her ability. She's going to get the Demon Alliance active, so she's going to be dealing bonus pure damage. She's going to have massively increased movement and attack speed, and also phasing movement. So she's just going to get right to them and just blow them up, hopefully. Then she's probably going to be a little bit in too deep and might end up dying on the backswing. But hey, I mean, she got her 1 kill, and that's what she's good for. She has a 3-star effect. While Spectre is alive, whenever any demon casts whenever a demon casts a spell, all allied demons will erupt in flames and wreath their targets in fire, dealing damage in a wide swath and setting units hit on fire. So essentially, this gives your demons dragon breath, the Dragon Knight ability. So every time that they cast the spell, obviously only one demon can cast at a time because they're all going to silence each other. But whenever one of them does, all of your demons breathe a burst of fire and hit the enemies. So this adds a lot of damage potential to heavy demon comps. Normally you don't want to put too many demons in, but if you can manage to get a 3-star Spectre, you can do some really crazy things with like 4, 5, or 6 demons, all of them just breathing fire every 4 seconds, the duration of the demon's silence, assuming they're all casting on cooldown. So Spectre looks to be really interesting if you can find places to fit her into builds. Next up, Death Prophet, another one of the previewed units. She is a Heartless Fallen. Once again, we'll get to the Fallen Alliance here in a moment. Her ability is Exorcism, so Death Prophet will send out evil spirits to roam the battlefield, dealing damage to all enemies that they pass through, and then at the end of the duration, they'll return to Death Prophet, healing her for a percentage of the damage dealt. And these will deal physical damage, so they do quite a bit in Heartless compositions, because It's a pretty large area effect, and it's really deceptively powerful. It does a lot of damage if Death Prophet can stay alive for the full duration. So she's kind of like a second line unit. You don't want her right up front to die right away, but kind of in the second line to hit the most people with this exorcism, and also hopefully keep her alive long enough to fully channel that duration. It's not a channel, but it's like, you want to keep her alive for the full time, otherwise you lose a lot of that damage. And then, of course, even if she survives at 1 HP, she's going to get a lot of healing whenever the spirits do return. So Death Prophet has a lot of carry potential, but does require quite a bit of careful positioning, and you can't be too terribly weak on the front line, otherwise she's going to get rolling over before you can really get her damage out. Pangolier is a tier 4 savage swordsman. There's another one of those new alliances, the Swordsman Alliance. And he's got the Shield Crash ability. Pangolier will jump up in the air and then slam back onto the ground, dealing damage to enemies nearby, and then gaining a reduction to incoming damage based on the number of nearby enemies. After the jump, all enemies in their attack range will focus their attacks on Pangolier. So what that means is it's not a taunt like old Axe where they would be silenced and they can't cast spells and they have to attack him. It basically is similar to how Vigilant will change their targeting. All of those units will then immediately focus on Pangolier, which is a little bit problematic for your opponents because he has this massive damage reduction percentage. So every enemy hits is going to reduce the damage taken by a percentage. So, Pangolier is just a great frontline tank. You're going to put him up front. He's going to take a couple hits. He's going to shield crash. Then he's going to be taking like 50% reduced damage based on, however many people he hits. And then they're also all going to be attacking him. So the rest of your team is very safe for that duration, and Pangolier becomes very tanky. This is a big improvement, I think, for Savage comps in particular. A lot of things with Savage, they lacked a tank until you could get somebody like Sand King, who even really wasn't a tank. He was just kind of a CC bot. And you do kind of have that in Spirit Breaker now, and Pangolier is really a good defensive guy that you can just kind of put right up front. Kind of similar to Tide Hunter in some respects, where he's a tier 4 unit you just put in front and center and put everybody else kind of behind him and keep him safe, and he'll do a very good job to keep the enemy in place for a little while. All right, Rubik. Now this is actually probably the unit I'm most excited for. Rubik is a tier 4 Mage Magus, which I do realize in other languages and translations this becomes like they're the same word, but obviously Rubik is the Grand Magus, and so he's going to be joining the Mage Alliance, and also has this new Alliance Magus. Once again, we'll get to that. Actually, I'll talk about the Magus here because Magus is a 1-unit alliance, so Rubik is the only unit in the game that has Magus, and therefore, if you have him out, it's going to trigger, just like Champion or Deadeye with Bloodseeker. So it's kind of core to his identity. The Magus Alliance says whenever Rubik, or the Magus, if you get it with Champion on Legion Commander, whenever the Magus it gets dropped to 50% HP for the first time in combat, so it's only once, they will temporarily go invulnerable and untargetable. And for 3 seconds, they won't be able to attack, but they can continue to cast spells. So the idea with Rubik is it's kind of a defensive ability. If anybody played whenever the Aeon Disc was in the game, it's essentially like having an Aeon Disc already equipped to your unit. So what is his ability? So his first ability is Fade Bolt. So Rubik will cast a powerful stream of arcane energy that will jump between targets, dealing damage and reducing their attack damage. This isn't too flashy of an ability. It's kind of like a chain lightning effect. You zap a guy, it jumps between them. It deals moderate damage, reduces their attack damage, but that's not the most interesting part of Rubik. Instead, the more interesting part is his passive called Spell Steal. Whenever a nearby enemy casts a spell, Rubik will cast a copy of that spell at his current star level. So this has a very small radius. At 1 star, Rubik only will cast people who are adjacent to him. So let's say enemy melee units who are casting spells on him. Once you get him up to 2 star, he can do it in a 2-cell radius, and if you manage to get Rubik up to 3 star, he'll do it in a 3-cell radius. Any opponent within that radius of him, whenever they cast a spell, Rubik will then attempt to cast that same copy of that spell. So, you put Rubik up on the front line, and you line him up against an opposing Bristleback. That Bristleback is casting every couple seconds. Rubik is also casting Quill Spray every couple seconds. Your opponent has a Meepo right there, and Meepo poofs away. Rubik poofs away, which could be good or bad. It could poof into the backline and then start copying their backline spells, or it could, get him in a very dangerous spot and he could just get killed right away. your opponent has a lichen that will transform, you better bet Rubik is going to transform into a wolf. He'll still keep his passive, obviously, but he'll gain the increased attack damage and health like lichen does, and also summon wolves. So Rubik has just... It's amazing the way you can just turn your opponent's strengths against them. Now, the power of the spell will be determined based on Rubik's star level. So your opponent has a big, powerful 3-star effect, but your Rubik's only 1-star. He's going to be casting the weak version of that spell. And also the radius is very limited. But that does play well with his Magnus Alliance, or Magus Alliance, where you can afford to put him up in the front row, a little bit more exposed, because he will get that couple seconds of invulnerability for the duration of the Magus Alliance effect. So I'm really excited to see how Rubik plays out. I think it's going to be very weird seeing, you casting all of your own your opponent's spells right back at them. But of course, it's a big investment with the tier 4 unit whose baseline ability, Fade Bolt, really not quite as impressive as some other mage effects. But obviously, if you can get good value to the spell steal, Rubik can be a massively powerful force. And the final new unit is the Wraith King, a tier 5 fallen swordsman. So he's got 2 of the new alliances. And his ability is Wraith Fire Blast. So Wraith King will sear an enemy with spectral fire, stunning them and damage them over the duration of the spell. So kind of similar to like Chaos Knight's Chaos Bolt. He's just going to target a guy, stun them for a little bit, and then add a damage over time effect. And it actually deals quite a bit of damage for being a tier 5 unit. But similar to Rubik, a big part of Wraith King's appeal is his passive ability called Raise Dead. It's passive that says, heroes will spawn zombies when they die near Wraith King. Now, this is very similar to the contraption Tombstone, where it has a radius around it, and anytime a hero dies near Wraith King, it will spawn a zombie. So he is going to be hopefully up in the front lines and, hitting people with his Wraith Fire Blast, stunning them, and if they're close, deals a lot of damage, and then he gets to kill them and bring them back as zombies. So he has a huge potential to carry the game in the late game, raising just lots and lots of zombies and continuing marching forward, basically a moving Tombstone. But once again, a big investment with a tier 5 unit, and the radius on the Raise Dead passive also scales with star level, so it's going to be pretty restrictive if you just have a 1-star Wraith King, but it does get pretty strong at 2 and 3-star. Okay, we also have some returning favorites. We've got Anti-Mage. He's going to be a tier 1 rogue hunter. Now, Anti-Mage used to be a demon hunter and also an elusive and just all kinds of other things. Right now, he's going to be a rogue, one of the new alliances, and a hunter because he hunts mages. And he has got a 3-star effect. Anti-Mage will deal bonus damage during mana break if he lowers his opponent's target's mana to 0. I guess his ability still stays the same as before. In fact, I think all of these units that are returning will have the same ability that they used to have. So Anti-Mage's ability was Mana Break. Every one of his auto attacks will burn mana from his target. And if it gets down to 0 and he's 3-star, it will deal bonus damage. Bounty Hunter is back as an assassin, not as a hunter, which is a little bit weird, but he's always been an assassin and I think it fit a little bit better. But he's also a rogue as well. And for his 3-star effect, Bounty Hunter will give a player 1 gold for combat if he kills a hero. So this has some huge potential. If you can get an early tier 3 Bounty Hunter, he is going to be raking in a lot of gold for you because he hits pretty darn hard at 3-star. He does fall off towards the later stages of the game, but if you can get a hyper reroll strategy going where you get an early 3-star Bounty Hunter, he can carry you for a while and then also generate a lot of gold so that you can transition into a more powerful late game. Enchantress is back. She is now a shaman healer. Shaman is one of the new / returning alliances. It is a returning name. We used to have a shaman alliance, but it does nothing at all like what it used to do. So once again, we'll get to alliances in a bit, but she's also a healer. Not a savage, by the way. We already have a couple other new savage units, so they're already a pretty full alliance, even without Enchantress. So she still has her healing ability, Nature's Attendance, and at 3-star, she will gain Untouchable. Whenever she is attacked, Enchantress has a chance to greatly slow her attacker's attack speed. So similar to what old Primordials used to be, where every time they'd be attacked, there was a chance that they would slow the attacker's attack speed. Enchantress will have that, and it's a pretty powerful effect. It gives her a lot of survivability up at 3 stars, so that she can stick around long enough to be healing people up. Phantom Assassin also returns. However, Phantom Assassin is now down at tier 1 instead of tier 3. And she is an Assassin Swordsman. Once again, she has a coup de grace effect, or a chance to crit, or bonus chance to crit on her auto attacks. And Phantom Assassin will gain the benefit at 3-star of your current rogue alliance, if any. So you can definitely see that this like rogue and assassin is definitely going to be a strategy. Rogue, assassin, swordsman is definitely going to be 3 alliances that you're probably going to want to combine. I think it should be pretty powerful, considering you've got bounty hunter who's a rogue assassin, phantom assassin who's an assassin swordsman, and also an honorary rogue if you can get her up to 3-star. Kunkka is back at tier 2, used to be a tier 4. He is a human warrior and swordsman as well. He's got that big sword. He does have his ghost ship ability, although it's clearly been nerfed from what it was at tier 4, but still going to be a big AoE stun for a tier 2 unit. And his 3-star effect, if you get him up to that point, he'll gain Tidebringer. Every few attacks, Kunkka will take a mighty swing, dealing bonus damage to his target and then cleaving to nearby enemies. So he can actually be a pretty powerful auto-attacking carry if you get him up to 3-star. Not only, is he going to be a 3-star unit, but he's going to be cleaving every few attacks with Tidebringer and dealing a lot of bonus damage and stunning. And the Swordsman ability fits that pretty well. We'll get to that in a second. Alchemist is coming back at tier 3. It used to be a tier 4. And Scrappy's are not back in, so he's got kind of all new alliances. He is now a Brute, Rogue, Poisoner. That's the first time I've said Poisoner. That is another new alliance. Obviously has something to do with poison. And at 3, he still has his acid spray ability, which, so whenever he casts it, he coats an area of the ground in acid, and that's going to reduce damage, or reduce the armor of nearby units, as well as deal ticking damage over time. If you manage to get Alchemist up to 3-star, he will enter a chemical rage at the start of battle, gaining increased attack speed, and being immune to magic for a few seconds, basically popping a BKB and getting some attack speed right at the start, so he can do his thing, be unencumbered by opposing effects. Everyone's favorite dragon has come back. Puck is back at tier 3 now. Puck, a dragon mage whose 3-star effect is Illusory Orbs cooldown is going to be greatly reduced. So this is going to be very similar to what we saw with Tinker back with Scrappy's, where you got this tier 3 unit that if you get it up to 3-star, can just spam out this AoE magic damage like nobody's business. So Illusory Orbs cooldown basically goes down to 0 or half a second. And so Puck just becomes a machine gun Puck, a big carry for mage comps or dragon comps if you can get Puck up to 3-star. And finally, Lena comes back up at tier 4 as a human mage. Obviously, her Laguna Blade ability has been massively buffed to compensate for her being up in tier 4. Although, of course, being tier 4, she does not have a 3-star effect to discuss. Okay, on to the alliances. I've kind of said we'll get to it. Let's actually get to it. The new alliances, Fallen. So this includes Vengeful Spirit, Death Prophet, Wraith King, as well as 3 existing units, Lich, Abaddon, and Terrorblade. The Fallen Alliance requires 3 or 6 units, just like Warriors do right now. Whenever each Fallen unit first dies, allies within 2 cells of the fallen unit are healed for 250 HP and gain plus 10% bonus damage to their attacks and spells for the rest of combat. A fallen unit can then revive 1 time per combat if you have 6 fallen, resurrecting with 50% HP. So basically, when you just have the 3 fallen, they are just going to do this AoE heal effect and also give a bonus damage to nearby allies when they die. Hence the fallen name, they're going to fall, and then give bonus to their allies. But if you do manage to get them up to 6 units, get all 6 of them, there's only exactly 6, because this is a very, very powerful effect, and, should not be given out easily. If you do manage to get all 6, they basically all have an Aegis of the Immortal equipped, the tier 5 item that brings your guy back at 50% HP. But they won't be able to trigger the Fallen bonus a second time, because that would get a little bit out of hand. So this is a weird alliance in the sense that it has kind of 2 separate effects. This 250 HP heal and 10% bonus damage does not scale any better when you get up to 6. but instead they get this resurrection effect, and that can be very big when you have high damage dealing units like Death Prophet or Terrorblade in your composition, so that your opponent gets on them, they still come back and can still deal a ton of damage. So would also not discount the healing as well from this. This is a good AoE heal effect, especially if you got 3 of them going off. That's basically a mechanism, 750 AoE heal. If you can get 3 fallen units to die and keep everybody on your team topped off. Next up, we got the Shamans. They are kind of returning, but they're entirely new. The Shaman Alliance is returning, but their effect is totally different. So it requires 2, 4, or 6 units, and the Shaman Alliance includes everybody who used to be a Druid, as well as Enchantress. Enchantress used to be a Druid, as well as Beastmaster. So you've got Enchantress, Beastmaster, Nature's Prophet, Treant Protector, Lone Druid, and I'm forgetting one. Magnus. That's the 6. So there's 6 Shamans units. Whenever combat starts, if you will summon a unit to help. If you have 2, you'll summon a wolf. If you have 4, you'll summon a wild wing. And if you have all 6, you'll summon a black dragon. This creature gains bonus effects based on the shaman units summoning it and their star level. So the way this works is, you've got your 2 units. They're going to summon a wolf. But that wolf, he's got his stats. He's got his attack and his health. But based on which 2 shamans you have, the wolf will have a different ability or different abilities. So if you have, say, Enchantress, then that wolf will gain a version of Untouchable, just like Enchantress's 3-star effect. If you have Treant Protector, that wolf will have bonus armor and health regen, as well as giving an aura of bonus armor and health regen to nearby allies. If you have Beastmaster as one of your shamans, then that wolf or whatever other unit you summon will have an attack speed increase based on the units that they kill. And these bonuses will all scale based on the star level of the unit. So if you have a 1-star Enchantress, the effect it gives the wolf or wild wing or whatever is not very strong. But if you have a 2-star, it's quite substantial. And if you have a 3-star, things get pretty powerful. The bonuses that they can give up at 3-star become very strong. So the idea is that this is not an alliance that you really just want to, I'll just splash in 2 1-stars and bam, it'll be the strongest thing ever. Just like old Druids were, where you guaranteed get an upgraded unit. This really rewards actually upgrading your shamans and kind of investing in getting that 2 and 3-star in particular of a lot of your shaman units, because then those buffs become massively more powerful to power up your black dragon by the end of the game, who has a baseline cleave in his attacks, just like the old black dragon creep round. That thing can carry pretty hard into the late game. So that's a really exciting alliance that kind of build your own monster, if you will. And we'll be very curious to see how that plays out. Obviously, with a lot of the druids, it'll pair very well with savages and summoners as well, just because you already have a lot of those, and the summoner ability buffs up the summoned unit. Swordsman, this alliance includes a lot of the new units as well as some of the returning ones. It's a 3/6 alliance, and each swordsman unit will gain plus 10% or 25% bonus damage for each enemy unit adjacent to it. So swordsmen really want to be right in the middle of the fight. They want to be front and center, or in the case of some of the assassins, they want to jump into a clustered group of enemies, because if they're surrounded by 8 enemies, that's 80% bonus damage. They're probably going to die pretty quick because, they're surrounded by 8 enemies, but, the upside is pretty big if they can get into the fray. So these are guys where positioning is going to be very important. You want to make it so that, they're going to be surrounded by as many enemies as possible, because if they're just one-on-one against the enemy, they're going to be kind of lackluster. They're just not going to be as strong as they potentially could be if they're surrounded by 2, 3, or 4 enemies, just doing that big cleave effects. Rogue Alliance. This is a smaller alliance. It requires 2 or 4 units for rogues. Allied rogue units will gain 20%/30% evasion. So it's not quite as good as old elusives, but whenever a rogue unit evades an attack, that unit will then gain, or the rogue unit will gain plus 10 or 20 attack damage. So it's kind of a hybrid offense/defensive alliance. It's not It's not as good of defense as, say, warriors or knights in terms of damage reduction, and it's not as good offensively as, say, assassins or hunters. But it's an interesting middle ground between the two. You know, your units want to be getting attacked so that they can evade attacks, but then that also is going to power them up so they'll be stronger over a longer fight. They'll be stronger if they have more HP, which means more evades. And there's also a new evasion item into the game, as well as things like Butterfly or Talisman of Evasion, which you're really going to want to pick up for rogues because then they have a higher chance to evade and gain that bonus attack damage. So this is an alliance that it's pretty easy to splash. You just require 2 units to get at least the initial tier of it. Getting up to all 4 is going to be a bit more of a challenge since there's only 5 in the game. But I think the payoff is pretty good if they get quite a bit more survivability and twice as much bonus attack damage every time they evade an attack. Also particularly good against things like summoners that summon a bunch of small hitting units. It doesn't matter if you dodge, you know, a massive demon-empowered auto attack, or you dodge a little treant slap that deals no damage at all. You're still going to gain that same amount of bonus attack damage from a rogue. Okay, the Poisoner Alliance. Now this alliance requires 3 units, and attacks from the Poisoners will then apply stacks of poison. So it does include Venomancer and Viper, obviously. Those are 2 very clearly Poisoner units. Alchemist, a brand new one, is also going to be a Poisoner. And Queen of Pain, while she doesn't have a poison effect in Dota Underlords, is Poisoner in Dota, as is Dazzle. So those are your 5 Poisoners, but you need to get 3 of them, and then they're all going to start applying poison on their auto attacks. I will say that Venomancer has lost that baseline ability. His auto attacks no longer apply poison until you get the Poisoner Alliance, but his wards still will. And then also once you get up to 3 Poisoners, enemies will lose 7 attack speed per stack of poison that they have. So poison can stack up to 5 times, so it can lose up to 35 attack speed, which is pretty substantial, and makes Poisoners a great alliance to pair up with Enno, who's going to be spreading a lot of poison with his either Death Whirl, his all-out attack, or just, you know, Enno himself just poisons everything around him. So this is going to be a pretty strong alliance to counter opposing auto attack base comps who really rely on that fast attack speed. But it's not going to be quite as effective against things like mages who are going to be dealing a lot of magic damage or ability damage. And then, of course, Magus, which we've already discussed, one required unit. This is on Rubik. And once per battle, when the Magus unit's health drops below 50%, unit becomes invulnerable and unable to attack for 3 seconds. Just kind of giving them a little bit of respite while they can cast their spell and hopefully not die just instantly at the start of combat. Okay, on to the new items. So we have got, 7 new items here. So we've got Craggy Coat, a tier 3 item. The equipped unit will gain plus 15 armor, but at the cost of negative 30 attack speeds. This is a very heavy coat that you got to wear, and it's going to slow you down, but it's going to give you quite a bit of armor in exchange. So this is obviously going to be great for frontlining tanks or units that the main value is in their abilities and not in their auto attacks. So units like Tidehunter or a lot of other just like frontline warriors that you just want to put up front and just say, hey, you're a tank now. Got people like Abaddon, or Omni Knight as well. You can put this on them and they're going to be super tanky and still be able to cast their ability, even if they're auto-attacking a little bit less. Heaven's Halberd, this is a tier 2 item. As I mentioned before, there's a new evasion item, so it gives plus 25% evasion. And also, whenever the equipped hero attacks, it will disarm the target for 3 seconds on a 10-second cooldown. So similar to what we saw out of Silver Edge, which applies a break on, you can actually get 100% uptime on break. Here, you don't have 100% uptime on the disarm, but it's a very powerful defensive item here just to really lock down whoever, if you can get this on a key carry, like maybe you put this on an assassin who jumps into the back line and you hit their Luna or their Windranger or their big damage dealer in the backline. You can disarm them while you're also dealing damage to them. This is just a really good item in a lot of situations. To give you a little bit of survivability and then a lot of survivability by disarming the target. But with all this evasion coming into the game, we also have Monkey King Bar, a tier 4 item, which the equipped hero will gain plus 90 attack damage and their attacks cannot miss. So this item is not going to be quite as good for DPS as, say, Moonshard for most units. It's going to offer a little bit less damage output. It can potentially overtake if you have very fast attack speed, since it offers a lot of damage. But it's more going to be a counter pick for whenever you are up against opponents who have evasion. So if you're up against opponents with rogues, or your opponent has like, say, 2 Heaven's Halberds, or other things like that that give them evasion percentage, then Monkey King Bar is going to be the go-to to just put an end to that and just make sure your attacks are always hitting, and to kind of counteract that rogue alliance or that Heaven's Halberd. Necronomicon is a new tier 3 item. Whenever equipped hero casts a spell, that hero will summon a Brill Bruiser. You remember the old little demon that Anesix could spawn with one of her old talents? If you don't, it's just a little demon unit, and it will auto attack things, and also has a chance to stun them on its auto attacks, like a bash percentage. You can only have 2 of these Necronomicon demons alive at once. So no matter how fast you're spamming your spells, so if you put it on, you still probably want to put it on somebody like Bristleback or Bat Rider, because they'll get to summon a whole lot very quickly because they have low cooldowns on their spells. But you'll still only have 2 maximum. But if one of them dies, you can easily get another one right back out, assuming the Necronomicon holder is still up. Paladin Sword is a tier 2 item that gives plus 25 attack damage, but also says all of your allied healing is increased by 20%. So this is a very powerful effect. It essentially gives you a tier of the healer alliance on an item. It's a little hybrid, you want to put it on somebody who values attack damage, but also on somebody who's going to be, or in a composition that wants to do a lot of healing. So any kind of healer comp or fallen comp, because it'll buff up the healing whenever the fallen units die. Or if you just have a Nesix with the healing effect, or Enno with his healing, Paladin Sword would be a very flexible item to fit into a lot of comps if you have any kind of healing at all. Pirate Hat, the equipped hero is a swordsman, so it's just a simple swordsman hat to help you complete that 6 swordsman alliance, which gives you the bonus once again for bonus damage based on how many opposing units are surrounding you. And finally, for new items, we've got Witless Shaco. This is another one of those trade-off items. Equipped hero will gain plus 1000 HP, but at the cost of gaining 50% less mana. So this is not quite the same as like a Mask of Madness silence effect, although it's 50% less mana is a pretty big detriment. You're going to be casting your ability quite slowly. This is very good on either, say, like somebody who wanted to have a Mask of Madness anyway, somebody without an active ability that you just want to keep alive, or bet on somebody who has a lot of armor or damage reduction to put them up on the front line, and even though they gain mana a little bit less slowly, they'll still get their ability off at some point. So it could still be good on somebody like Tidehunter, even if he casts a few seconds later because of the mana gain. He will still be very tanky, and he's only going to cast once per fight anyway, so if that comes out a few seconds later, it's not necessarily the end of the world. So an interesting item there to see where that will fit in. All right, on to a bunch of hero changes. There is a lot. A lot of the units in the game have been slightly tweaked. In fact, at the bottom here, we say, and various hero balance tweaks. So we can't go into every single little minute change that happened in terms of stats and whatnot, but kind of the big ones are going to be listed here. So Dazzle has been changed from tier 2 down to tier 1 and is now also a poisoner. So he still is a troll healer poisoner, and he's going to be a bit more accessible down at tier 1. I will also say that every time a unit changes their tier, their stats have been appropriately adjusted so that they fit into that tier. It's not like, oh, he's got the old 2-star damage and HP and stuff down at, tier 2 stats down at tier 1. He's been balanced appropriately. Lich used to be the big kind of trump card of mages, but now he's been dropped down into tier 1. So this is a big rework on Lich. So now instead of casting Chain Frost, he will cast Frost Shield. He will apply a shield device to a random ally, reducing the damage that ally takes from auto attacks. While the shield is active, enemy units nearby will take damage and lose movement and attack speed. So this does a lot. It's defensive, keeps a guy alive, deals AoE damage, and also reduces enemy movement and attack speed. Like that's a lot of effects for a tier 1 unit. He now has a Chain Frost ability that is unlocked at 3-star. So he will get to cast Chain Frost, but you will have to get him up to 3-star in order to do that. Also, not noted here, Lich has changed from a Heartless mage to a Fallen mage. So he fits into Fallen comps. I always thought it was kind of weird to have a Heartless mage because Heartless didn't really care about, or Heartless cared about reducing armor and increasing physical damage, whereas mage wanted to do magic damage. So they didn't really mesh well. So Fallen should fit the mages a little bit better because the Fallen alliance will buff up your mage ability damage. Magnus changed from Savage Druid to Savage Shaman. Essentially, this is the same for everything. Everything that was a Druid is now a Shaman, plus Beastmaster is also a Shaman. Slarter changed from Tier 2 down to Tier 1. That's to keep a balance of Warriors in Tier 1. We haven't got to the removed units yet, but there's some Warriors that have been removed from the pool, so that kind of keeps Warriors, a lot of Warriors still in the early game. Venomancer is now a Poisoner. His, as mentioned before, his auto attack is no longer Poisoner unless you have the Poisoner Alliance active. Plague Wards still do poison, always. Juggernaut has been moved up to Tier 3, up from Tier 2, and kind of as a paired thing, Beastmaster has been changed from Tier 2 to up to Tier 3 to swap around those Brawnies. Juggernaut he's no longer a Warrior, though. He is now a Brawny Swordsman. And he has a new 3-star effect. While Juggernaut is alive, all allied heroes will gain 15% of Juggernaut's maximum HP. So this has some crazy potential if you manage to get Juggernaut up to Tier 3, get a lot of Brawny kills on your team. He can act as like another level of the Brawny Alliance by giving everybody 15% of his max HP. You can't have him just die right away, otherwise everyone else loses the HP, but it's very powerful effect, giving a lot of bonus HP, assuming you are snowballing well with Brawnies. Legion Commander has a new 3-star effect. At the start of the duel, any units targeting Legion Commander, other than her duel partner, will pick new targets. So similar to like the Vigilant or the Pangolier effect, they'll just kind of retarget away. They'll say, oh, Legion Commander's dueling, we should probably leave them alone to do their duel. So hopefully this can eliminate some cases where, Legion Commander is a little bit weak, not ready to one-shot people in her duel, and then she casts a duel and then instantly dies because everyone's attacking her. Most of them will then attack somebody else, and Legion Commander gets her one-on-one time in the duel. Nature's Prophet, once again, the Druid over to Shaman. Queen of Pain now a Poisoner, simple things. Abaddon. Abaddon is no longer a Heartless. Abaddon is now a Fallen Knight. So pairing up Heartless with Knights is now going to be quite a bit more difficult. It generally won't be just kind of free, like, oh, I play Abaddon plus one other Heartless. But Fallen is a lot more appealing to pair up with Knights who, still want that healing. And so Abaddon is going to be key in pairing up Fallen and Knights. Beastmaster, like I said, changed up to Tier 2 to 3 and is now a Shaman. Ember Spirit is now also a Swordsman. Makes sense. He's got 2 swords. He likes to hop into the middle of fights. So Ember Spirit can hit really, really hard if he gets a big Swordsman bonus and then does a Sleight of Fist, bouncing around to all the enemies and just dealing tons of damage. If you get that Swordsman Alliance active. Also helps with the Swordsman/Assassin build because he's another Swordsman Assassin, just like Phantom Assassin. Slark has been changed from Tier 4 down to Tier 3, and he also gained a new 3-star effect, with accordance with being down at Tier 3. Slark will gain Dark Pact. After a short delay, Slark will sacrifice some of his lifeblood, purging negative effects and damaging nearby enemies. Slark himself takes some of the damage too. Now, Slark still really wants to get Mask of Madness, because it just scales so well with him, the attack speed and the lifesteal, so you probably won't be casting this ability all too terribly often, assuming you get a 3-star Slark. Hopefully you have a Mask of Madness for him, but if you have to settle for something like Moonshard, then he does get a little bit of ways to purge off negative stuns or other effects that are on him, so he can kind of break free of some opposing ways of controlling him. Terrorblade, as mentioned before, is now a Fallen, as well as being a Demon and Hunter. Treant Protector is a Druid, but changed over to Shaman, but also he is no longer a Brute. We did get a new Brute in the form of, actually 2 new Brutes in the form of Spirit Breaker and Alchemist. So Treant Protector is now a healer as well. So it should give a little bit more power to the healer alliance. You've got Treant as a Shaman healer and Enchantress as a Shaman healer. So generally, whenever you have 2 units with the same 2 alliances, they're often going to be played right together, just like Treant and Enchantress, as well as Vengeful Spirit and Death Prophet for Heartless and Fallen. So definitely going to see some more healer action going on there, and then Treant Protector will be a little bit stronger for his healing role. Although it does make him a little bit harder to fit into comps that previously wanted him for his Brute, or the Brute build. Lone Druid, once again, just swapped over to Shaman, still a Savage Summoner Shaman. Sven has several changes to his alliances. He used to be a human scaled knight. Now he is a rogue knight swordsman. Sven is the rogue knight in Dota lore, so it makes a lot of sense. And swordsman, obviously, he wants to be right in the middle of the fray, doing his big cleave, and he's going to get bonuses on that for being a swordsman. Should still fit really well into knight compositions, especially if you can pair him up with, say 3 swordsmen plus like 4 knights or something like that. Could be a very potent combo to make Sven just go absolutely crazy in terms of damage output. Viper, his tier has changed from 3 up to 4, so Viper is now a tier 4 unit and has been buffed accordingly. And his alliance has changed from Dragon Assassin to Dragon Poisoner. So that is he's kind of like the capstone of the Poisoner alliance. I mean, there's 5 Poisoners. Viper is just very, very strong unit. If you get him up to 2 star plus the Dragon Alliance, he just deals a ton of damage and is very tanky thanks to his Dragon effect and now the Poisoner effect slowing attack speed. So despite this change, no longer in Assassin builds, he still should fit very, very well in any build that wants to run Poisoner or Dragon. He is just an absolute monster on his own right, assuming you get those alliances active. He doesn't really need the Assassin Alliance to deal a lot of damage. He can do quite a bit on his own. And finally, Keeper of the Light. The tier has been changed from 4 up to 5. We now have Rubik and Lena as mages in tier 4. They're going to be your tier 4 mages that that can carry your mid to late game. And then Keeper of Light is going to be the tier 5 unit. And of course, he's been buffed accordingly and deals a bit more damage now. But he's going to be quite a bit harder to get online, being a tier 5 unit, a little bit rarer. Okay, on to some changes to existing alliances. The Brawny units used to be a 4x multiplier for 3-star hero. Now it's a 3-star. It's 1-2-3 multiplier instead of 1-2-4. So a little bit of a reduction to the power of tier 3 or 3-star Brawnies. Once again, though, Juggernaut should still be pretty strong at tier 3 to kind of make up for that lost HP. Heartless has gotten a slight buff at 4 units, from 4-8-15 up to 4-10-15. Knights have received a very small buff at 4 and 6 units, up to 15-20-25 instead of the weird 15-19-23 damage reduction. So Knights get a little bit of a bonus there. Savage has been buffed up at 6 Savage from 5-8-10 up to 5-8-13. So 6 Savage looks pretty appealing now. Troll, the bonus attack speed to non-troll allies has been buffed at 2 trolls, but this also comes with the fact that there are only 4 trolls left in the game. More on that in a second. So getting up to all 4 trolls is going to be quite a bit more difficult than it is right now. And warriors have gotten a slight buff, 9-19 up to 10-20. Okay, onto the existing item changes. Most of these are pretty impactful. Some big reworks to existing items. So barricades now only gives you 2 placeable barricades. Used to give you 3, and they are immune and invulnerable. They are on the board and they are not moving. They are not dying. They are just there, and they will block enemies, so enemies can't walk through them. You can ranged attack through them, but it gives cover to the units behind them. So instead of blocking damage up to their health total, now barricades will block 50% of every attack that passes through them. But you only get 2 of them, so you can kind of block 1 person into the corner, but there's still kind of 1 area of access there. So it's a little bit less flexibility in like how you build your barricades, but they are a bit more impactful because they will never die, and you can't attack them at all. So once you place them, they're going to stay there and give cover to your units behind them. Battle Fury has been slightly buffed up to 50% cleave. Blade Mail has been reduced from tier 3 down to tier 2, and also has its damage reflection percent reduced from 30 to 20. Dragonlance got a substantial buff from 20 bonus damage up to 35 bonus damage. That is a big change. So Dragonlance should be much more competitive in tier 2 now. Yule Scepter, another big buff, up from 5 to 10 mana per second. A little bit more appealing for caster comps. Headdress. Now, this is a rework that, along with Headdress, Vitality Booster, and Hood of Defiance, they all got this new mechanic on them. So instead of just giving a flat bonus to the unit holding them, it says the equipped hero, and then allied units within one cell to the left or right of them at the start of combat will gain some effect. So for Headdress, it'll be 20 HP per second. Hood of Defiance, 30% magic resistance, or Vitality Booster plus 250 HP. So instead of just giving a kind of boring effect to one unit, now this is a way of kind of giving an aura to your team that will lock in at the start of combat. So it'll be more interesting to see how you want to organize your board to make sure that, okay, this guy's in the middle who has this, and then you kind of want to put your units that you want to protect right next to them. So maybe you put this on the frontline unit for the health regen. Maybe you put Vitality Booster near a backline unit to help prevent them from dying to AoE effects or Assassin who jump on them. Essentially, it's a way of equipping an item to your carry unit without being able to equip 2 items. They still get their damage item that you want to put on them, but now they also have a defensive item in the form of this aura. So that's 3 items that all do that. Caden's Blade has been buffed rather substantially from 7% up to 9% as a better way of countering the high health totals of units like Brawnies. Maelstrom has been changed up to tier 4. It now does its 25% chance for 125 damage to 4 targets. It does not fall off in terms of it used to reduce damage per jump. It does not do that anymore, so it does a little bit more. And also does 50% more damage to summoned units. Now, if you've been paying attention, you might be thinking there's a lot more summoners in the game now with the Wild Alliance summoning a lot of units, as well as things like Meepo, his summoners, as well as Wraith King summoning zombies. There's quite a bit more summons running around in the game now than there was before, so Maelstrom should be your go-to unit to help counter the summoner builds that rely on just a lot of units out on the board. Pipe of Insight has been buffed rather substantially. The shield HP changed up 225 to 250, and the radius has been increased to 2 cells, so no longer is it only people directly adjacent. It's now more or less a team-wide, assuming you're stacked up, give a lot of HP for the magic shield to a lot of your units. Vladimir's Offering, kind of one of the hardest items to balance in the history of the game, always been really, really powerful, has been bumped up to tier 5. Still very strong option if you kind of have a death ball composition where you just want to group up and just have all these auras and healing and just kind of run at opponents with the bonus lifesteal, armor, and damage percentage. So Vladimir's Offering is still a pretty powerful pick, but it will be a little bit harder to get up at tier 5. And Voidstone got a small nerf from 10 mana per second down to 7 mana per second. Okay, and also the rotated out units. So this is, I would say this is probably a lot more important than some of the other things that were on this list, but here we are. The heroes that have rotated out are Arc Warden, Bloodseeker, Broodmother, Disruptor, Enigma, Io, Morphling, Necrophos, Nyx Assassin, Ogre Magi, Razor, Sand King, Shadow Fiend, Tiny, Warlock, Weaver, and Witch Doctor. So that's a big list, but it's easier if you just look at the alliances that have been removed, and essentially all the units from those alliances have been removed. So Bloodbound has been an alliance that has historically been very difficult to balance and led to very unfun games with Bloodseeker and just a bunch of sacrifice units to buff up, one unit to, infinitely large proportions. And it was also a nightmare to try to balance between with Legion Commander. So just a lot of things going against Bloodbound. So Bloodbound has gotten removed. Because Deadeye was a 1-unit alliance with Bloodseeker, also been removed. Druid, as I mentioned, has kind of been reworked into Shaman. All of the Druid units moved over to Shamans. Insects has been removed as kind of an alliance that struggled to find an identity, along with Primordial, as is this an offensive alliance? Is this a defensive alliance? It kind of did neither of them very well. And, Insects was so easily countered by the mass amount of AoE effects in the game between things like Bristleback and now Alchemist into the game. It just wasn't it was an alliance that struggled to find its like a healthy place in the meta. And same with Primordials. Like the Primordials have been through a lot of reworks on its alliance ability, and it's never been like kind of the build around me like alliance that I think it really wanted to be. Except for that one time when 6 Primordials was a thing, and it was busted at 6, but basically unplayable any other time. So the Primordials has been rotated out. So all the Primordials like Arcwarden, Razor, Tiny, all of them are gone. And the Warlock Alliance has been removed. Obviously, the unit named Warlock has been removed, but so have the other Warlocks, Witch Doctor, Shadow Fiend, etc. And Necrophos, Disruptor, Broodmother. So this is I think this is probably the bigger change. The Warlocks being gone, they were one of these alliances that were very build around, kind of core to certain builds, and also it means that there's a lot less healing in the game now. Warlocks used to do absurd amounts of healing, and that's going to be obviously cut down with them gone. And something like Fallen for the healing when the Fallen dies is going to have to take its place, but it's a much lower absolute amount of healing. You don't have like the kind of unbounded cap on how much a Warlock can heal, and like the massive burst heals from things like Shadow Fiend. But instead you have a more consistent AoE heal to your entire team. And this also solves the problem that would sometimes happen with games or fights where like I've got my team of say Knights and Warlocks, and you've got your almost identical team of Knights and Warlocks. It's almost a mirror match, but I'm maybe a little bit stronger. I've got a couple units a higher star level than you do, or maybe a better item or two. Instead of being a close fight where I win at the end by a little bit of HP, a couple of units, instead when there's so much healing from things like Warlocks, they become complete stomps. They become absolute stomps where you deal 20 plus damage to the enemy just because you are a tiny bit stronger, because your units don't quite die and they live long enough to get healed back up by the massive healing from Warlocks. And where your opponent's units die, and obviously the healing is just cut off because anything that was linked with that now doesn't heal. And you just end up snowballing and steamrolling enemies if you're just a tiny bit stronger. Instead of having close, tense fights, you just have complete steamrolls. And so Warlocks being removed should eliminate that. There should be a lot more closer fights without massive healing on both sides. And items that have been removed. Aegis of the Immortal has been removed, obviously kind of incorporated into the Fallen Alliance at 6 units. Crystallis, a kind of boring damage item, just giving some crit percent. Nothing too interesting going on there. It was just a stat stick, really. Force Staff was an item that was like very rarely picked, but also has been incorporated into the Shaman Alliance with Magnus. So check that out. His ability basically is Force Staff to your summoned creature. Hand of Midas, gold generation was kind of in a weird spot. It came pretty late into the game at tier 3, and you're like, well, I'm not getting as many free kills as I would have liked at then, whereas if it was a tier 1 or tier 2 item, and so the gold's less important. And also you can pick up somebody like Bounty Hunter who can generate you some bonus gold in that same way. Obviously, Mantle of the Flayed Twins and Ogre Cap have to be removed because you don't have those alliances anymore. Orb of Venom is basically redundant whenever there's Poisoner Alliance in the game. You can just get Poisoners to give your guys auto attack poison effect, and Tombstone as well, because that functionality is now in Wraith King. If you want a Tombstone, you can pick up Wraith King, and he's basically a walking Tombstone to summon zombies. All right, so that wraps up all of the important changes. There are some bug fixes and other odds and ends. Won't get into too much detail on that, but wow, this has been a massive change. Like I said, it is sure to absolutely shake up the meta. And as basically the lead designer on this update, I really hope everybody enjoys it and finds a lot of fun in playing with these new units, the new alliances, new items, all kinds of crazy new stuff that I think will make a very fun game and breathe a lot more life back into Underlords. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you again soon. Thank you so much for watching.